One of the things when you're a church planter is you're just trying to figure out how to do church. You're trying to how to preach to these people, how to teach them, disciple them. And it's a great time, it's a very stimulating time to be reading other things and learning from other things. So I often, I'm reading over the years both emerging and traditional because I want to glean whatever I can to help me pastor these people. Sometimes it's just taking a deep breath, humbling ourselves, not jumping to the attack, learning to listen before we speak, so that we don't get into the shouting matches or the arguments. But then once we get into the dialogue and we're learning and we've made an attempt to understand the other person, I think it's still at that point there's going to be differences, and you're going to have to agree to disagree in the midst of it. What causes us to jump into ad hominem attacks, where we attack the person and we get off the argument, is we're ultimately insecure about what we believe. And insecure people, like a bully on a playground, will attack instead of being civil with people. And I think the more I'm confident in who I am and what my tradition says, the less threatened I am when someone pokes a hole or a weakness in it. I already know the weakness. Yeah, you're right. Okay, let's talk about that. How can I learn from you and you can learn from me? I think most of us are insecure enough that we feel like, gosh, I don't like being in a position where that person doesn't agree with me. I've got to get them there. They don't like to deal with the tension of that. And you just can't really live with other human beings for long without that tension or anxiety being there. It's just part of life. I think biblical faith is worth contending for. I just don't think it's as narrow as we often make it. Here's the first tiers that we're going to agree on, and then we're going to continue to dialogue on the second and third tier stuff, but we're not going to split over second and third tier stuff. But I think there's times where the first tier, when we don't agree on the first tier, we're not going to be able to have fellowship with those people or on that level. And I think you can't read a book like 1 John without realizing that there's going to be differences that are worth splitting over. I mean, John comes into the early church, the Apostle John, and he's coming in and basically saying these people are no longer with us. And so there are going to be times where, there's going to be differences that you can't reconcile. But it doesn't mean we stop being civil or we stop loving those people, we start reaching out. I want to see the church, even when we have differences, we're unified around the gospel. We call each other brothers and sisters. We can even work together across denominational lines because those first tier things we're rooted in. And then the watching world looks at us and says, gosh, even in the midst of their differences, even theological, political, socioeconomic levels, culturally, ethnically, they're together. The gospel's powerful. It breaks down barriers. Francis Schaeffer, one of my favorite philosophers and theologians, would say that's the final apologetic that Jesus is talking about. When the world looks at us and they say, gosh, these Christians love each other, then they realize that Jesus has really come to earth.